Hello everyone, I am Dr. Oyon. Today we will discuss about opioid analgesics. I have divided the full topic into 4 different classes. Today in the first class we will discuss about pain and its modulatory pathways along with endogenous opioids and their receptors. So let us dive into it. What is pain? Pain is an unpleasant sensation that we often feel or experience as a result of some noxious stimuli. Now, what do I mean by noxious stimuli? A noxious stimuli can be a mechanical injury, like a physical injury to our body, or it can be a thermal stimuli, like a burn injury, or it can be a chemical stimuli, like inflammatory injury. All these will produce pain. Pain is also a protective reflex of our body. It helps us to avoid and warn against noxious stimuli. As for example, if our body comes in contact with a fire, we generally withdraw immediately and we avoid future exposure to such noxious stimuli. This withdrawal and avoidance reflex is a part of protective response of pain. Did you know that pain is the most common symptom with which a patient comes to a physician, and it's worldwide most common presenting complaint? That's why it is very important to know about pain and how to alleviate pain with the help of medications. In general, from our knowledge of physiology, we know there are two types of pain. One is known as first sharp or acute pain. Other is known as slow dull or chronic pain. We can also classify pain according to its source of origin. Like if the pain comes from superficial structures like skin, muscle, etc., we call it integumentary pain. If the pain originates from deeper structures like viscera and organs, we call it visceral pain. The difference between integumentary and visceral pain is very simple. Integumentary pain, as we discussed, it is a superficial type of pain which originates from skin, muscle, fascia, joints, etc. Generally, this integumentary pain is of first sharp or acute type of pain, though there are exceptions. The most distinguishing feature of integumentary pain is it's highly localized. That means our central nervous system can appropriately and accurately localize the source of origin of this type of pain. Generally, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which are known as common painkillers, are very much effective against this type of integumentary or superficial pain. As opposed to visceral pain are deep in nature, which originates from organs like heart, stomach, gallbladder, kidney, etc. Generally, visceral pains are chronic in nature, but there are exceptions where there is acute severe pain originating from the viscera, like in myocardial infarction. But as opposed to integumentary pain, visceral pains are very poorly localized, as central nervous system cannot accurately localize the point of origin of that pain, and it has a tendency to radiate or refer to some other somatic structure which are related to the same dermatome as that of that organ from where the pain is actually originating. Like for example, the pain of myocardial infarction occurs in the myocardium, but the pain radiates or refers to chest wall and arms, particularly left arm. This is an example of radiation or referral of pain to some somatic structure. With visceral pain, there are some nausea and autonomic symptoms that is often experienced in the form of sweating, palpitation, fluctuation in blood pressure, etc. What is most noticeable regarding the visceral pain is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs are generally ineffective in visceral type of pain, and we need to use some special type of analgesics known as opioids analgesics to treat visceral pain. So opioids are much more effective than NSAIDs in a case of visceral pain. Before we go into the tidbits of opioid analgesics, let us recapitulate our physiological knowledge of pain and its pathways. Generally, the pain which originates from different structure of our body is carried towards our central nervous system via double pathway. Let us discuss it one by one. See, in this figure, the pain is originating from these nociceptors are activated by chemical, mechanical or thermal injury. These nociceptors are nothing but free nerve endings. Nociceptors are actually the long action of the first order neuron, which is having in its cell body into the dorsal root ganglion, and it is actually projecting to the dorsal horn of our spinal cord. After entering the dorsal root, it reaches the spinal cord, and from there it crosses in front of the central column and reaches to the contralateral side. From now onwards, the second order neuron, which starts as a spinothalamic tract, travels upwards up to the level of medulla, where it gives collateral branches to reticular formation. At the level of midbrain, where it gives collateral branches to periaqueductal gray matter, and finally it reaches thalamus. From the thalamus, the third order neuron starts, and it is projecting to the somatosensory cortex or limbic structures. When I told dual pathways of pain transmission, what I actually mean is that there are two types of pain. One is known as first sharp pain, which is carried via faster fibers known as A delta fibers. And there are some chronic dull pain which is carried via C type of unmyelinated fibers, which is rather slow in conduction. Both of these fibers actually travels together, but up to the level of thalamus. From the thalamus, the A delta fibers project towards somatosensory cortex, but the C fibers generally projects to the limbic structures and is diffusely localized. Let us concentrate on the spinal cord transaction, where the A delta and C fibers are entering through dorsal root. Here in this dorsal root, the A delta and C fibers are entering into the dorsal horn. And as we know, the dorsal horn is divided into different layers. A delta fibers forms synapse at the level of lamina marginalis, whereas C fibers form synapse at the level of substantia gelatinosa. From there, they crosses to the opposite side, and A delta fibers is carried inwards, whereas C fibers is carried outwards, but both are within the same spinothalamic tract. This spinothalamic tract is also known as anterolateral spinothalamic tract. If we concentrate on the upper part of this figure, we can see after reaching the medulla and the midbrain, these two types of fibers differs. A delta fibers goes and joins with the dorsal column, which is carrying touch and proprioception from the same area, and it reaches up to the ventrovasal complex and posterior nuclear group of thalamus. From there, The third order neuron projects to the somatosensory cortex, which is known as sensory homunculus. But the slow pain fibers type C, they bypasses the thalamus and reaches to the limbic structure including amygdala, cingulate gyrus and intralamellar nuclei, etc. So we can differentiate between fast sharp and slow chronic pain with some differentiating factors in the left column. The character of that fast sharp pain is acute and sudden in onset, whereas and it persists long for chronic pain. Nature, generally fast sharp pains are known as good pains. It's a protective reflex and it responds to non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. But the chronic pain is known as bad pain because it is difficult to treat. We need narcotics and other analgesics. The velocity of the first sharp pain is in 6 and 30 meters per second and slow chronic pain is 0.5 to 2 meters per second. So generally an individual feel the pain of first sharp pain within 0.1 second after stimulus, but it takes longer, more than 1 second for chronic pain. The stimulus in case of first sharp pain fibers is either mechanical or thermal injury. But for chronic slow pain, it is generally chemical or inflammatory injury. The receptors, which is also known as nociceptors, are actually free nerve endings. So for first sharp pain, thermal and mechanical nociceptors generally receives the signal, but for chronic pain, polymodal nociceptors including thermal, mechanical as well as chemical stimulus is required. The afferent carrying fibers for the first sharp pain is myelinated, that's why they are faster, they are A delta fast fibers. Whereas the afferents for slow chronic pain is unmyelinated C type of fiber. The major neurotransmitter for this first sharp pain is glutamate, whereas it is substance P for slow and chronic pain. The first order neuron for the first sharp fibers generally form synapse with the second order neuron at the level of lamina 1 known as lamina marginalis, whereas the first order neuron for slow chronic pain forms synapse at lamina 2 and 3 known as substantia gelatinosa of spinal cord. The ascending pathway thereafter with the second order neuron is known as anterolateral spinothalamic tract. That tract is subdivided into two. Though they are running parallelly and together, the first sharp pain fibers comes closer to the central column and it is known as neospinothalamic tract because embryologically they are newer in origin. Whereas the slow chronic pain fibers runs as paleospinothalamic tract, that is older embryologically. The second order neuron, which is continuing within this spinothalamic tract, terminates in thalamus in case of fast sharp pain, particularly in ventrobasal and posterior nuclear group of thalamus. Whereas for slow chronic pain, it diffusely terminates in the brainstem, medulla, etc. in these areas like reticular formation, tectal region, periaqueductal gray matter. The third and fourth order neuron projection from thalamus in case of first sharp pain reaches to somatosensory cortex. These particular group of fibers are responsible for sensory discriminative component of pain. That means it signals our somatosensory cortex regarding the presence and exact location of the origin of the pain. Whereas the third and fourth order neuron projection of the slow chronic pain diffusely reaches to limbic structures like amygdala and cingulate gyrus, and this type of fibers particularly helps in motivational affective component of the pain. That means it helps us to experience the suffering and the discomfort associated with the pain. As we already discussed, first sharp pains are highly accurate So the localization by the CNS is very accurate in case of first sharp pain, but it is very poor in case of slow chronic pain. Now, how CNS deal with the pain transmission? Our body, like many other systems, has its own analgesic system. We call it pain control system or analgesic system. And it is operating at the two levels, at the level of spinal cord and other supraspinal level. In this particular figure, see that afferent fibers is carrying pain sensation both from visceral structures like kidney in here and somatic structure like muscle in here. They are ultimately forming synapse at the dorsal root of spinal cord with the second order neuron. The second order neuron crosses the central canal from the front and is going upwards contralaterally in the form of spinothalamic tract. While going upwards and reaching up to the top tier of central nervous system, it giving some collateral to periaqueductal gray matter. Now, this is known as ascending pathway of pain transmission. While it is giving collateral to the periaqueductal gray matter, that periaqueductal gray is actually activating some other important group of structure which is helping in reducing that pain. This is known as descending pathway or gate control mechanism. At the level of spinal cord, there is inhibitory interneurons which are located in between first and second order neurons. Let me show you in this figure. Between first and the second order neuron, there is red colored interneurons. These interneurons are inhibitory in nature, located in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord, and these liberates some endogenous chemicals known as opioid peptides, for examples enkephalins and dynorphins. These interneurons causes presynaptic and postsynaptic inhibition of the incoming A delta and type C fiber at the synapse of the dorsal horn, thereby preventing further upward progression via ascending pathway in the pain transmission. At the level of spinal cord also, there is a mechanism known as gate control mechanism. What is that? The surrounding area from where the pain is actually originating also carries touch fibers. These touch fibers or tactile fibers are generally A alpha and A beta fiber. They are located in the neighborhood of these nociceptors. They are also carrying their own touch sensation along with the pain sensation. Now these A delta and A fibers also form synapse at the level of dorsal horn of spinal cord. While they are running parallelly with the nociceptive fibers, they give inhibitory collateral branches which is called lateral inhibition in physiology. Actually, while running parallelly, they inhibits the pain signal. This is known as gate control mechanism. Now, what is happening at the level of supraspinal? In the supraspinal level, that means above spinal cord, there is a descending pain modulating pathway which we were discussing regarding periaqueductal gray matter. This periaqueductal gray matter projects to and activates some neuron in nucleus raffimagnus and some neuron in rostral ventromedial medulla and locus coeruleus. The first group, nucleus raffimagnus, in turn, after activation, liberates serotonin, whereas the last two groups like rostral ventromedial medulla and locus coeruleus, in turn after activation, it produces catecholamines. These serotonergic and catecholamine projections then projects to the dorsal horn at the level of spinal cord and releases these two neurotransmitters, serotonin and norepinephrine. These in turn activates inhibitory opioid containing interneuron which now inhibits the ascending pathway. So there is a spinal and supraspinal pathway, and gate control mechanism is one of the most important pain modulating mechanism that our body is having. Now we humans, we are quickly adapting this pain modulation pathway in our day-to-day practice. How? There is a treatment facility known as transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation. What is this? We put electrodes on the skin or even at the level of spinal cord, even supraspinal level at the level of periaqueductal gray, and we give electrical impulse to these areas so that it activates inhibitory descending pathways and liberates opioids, which reduces the actual pain. Acupuncture, on the other hand, is actual rationale behind. If you put another pain fibers, if you activate another pain fibers, it will give lateral inhibition to the original pain fibers. So acupuncture utilizing this mechanism. Also, it is a very common practice to rub over or blow over the skin near painful area after the pain has happened. We generally blow over the skin. Why? Because it activates the touch receptors in the local area, which ultimately inhibits the pain sensation via lateral inhibition. Also, the same theory is utilized in case of liniments or counter irritants like bumps, like Amrutanjan bumps. They counter irritates the local area so that that fibers is laterally inhibiting the actual pain fibers. Before of discovery of endogenous opioid, we did not know this chemical substance existed. But we knew something, that there are some stereoselective receptors for morphine-like analgesics in brain tissue. And that receptors did not have any particular ligand. It was lying vacant. It did not have any agonist. We call those receptors as orphan receptors. Like it do not have any parent in the form of a ligand. Later, this unidentified endogenous ligand's presence has been come into people's mind. This is followed by discovery of three major families of endogenous opioids peptides. These families are enkephalins, endorphins, and dynorphins. Enkephalins are of two types. One is methionine containing residue, that is known as methionine enkephalin or met-enkephalin. Another one is leucine containing residues, that is leucine enkephalin or leuenkephalin. Endorphins, particularly beta endorphins, are very much prominent, and among dynorphin there are dynorphin A and dynorphin B. All these enkephalins, endorphin, dynorphins are collectively called endogenous opioids. Their origin is somewhat complex. Actually, these opioid peptides are fragments of a larger molecule which is derived from larger precursor proteins known as either pro-opiomelanocortin or POMC or pro-enkephalin or pro-dynorphin. From these larger molecules, smaller molecules are produced. These larger molecules are widely distributed into our central nervous system. The enkephalins are released from the neurons throughout this pain axis, as we have already seen, including periaqueductal gray, medulla, and spinal cord. These activates opioid receptor in these areas and thereby block the transmission of pain impulse. These endogenous opioids are actually functioning as a neuromodulator or neurotransmitter, but it is inhibitory in nature. Exogenous opioid analgesics, which was later discovered, activates that same areas which endogenous opioids is working on. That is descending pathways, periaqueductal grade, raphe nucleus, locus coeruleus neuronal pathway, but they also directly activate opioid receptor in spinal cord and even in the peripheral nociceptory afferent neurons. Now, as these endogenous opioids are working, there must have been some receptors, those stereoselective receptors I was talking previously. Now, opioids receptor overall can be classified into three types. One is known as mu opioid receptors, one is known as kappa, another one is known as delta opioid receptors. All these receptors are actually G protein coupled receptors. Now, G protein coupled receptors is associated with some second messenger system. Here in this case, this second messenger is cyclic AMP. These GPCRs reduces intracellular, means intraneuronal cyclic AMP level. By reducing CAMP level, they close voltage gated calcium channels which are located in the presynaptic nerve ending and which is responsible for degranulation of the stored vesicles. Thereby, they reduce neurotransmitter release, those of glutamate, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, serotonin and substance P. At the same time, these receptors opens potassium channels in the postsynaptic neurons, and leaking of potassium from intercellular to the extracellular area results in hyperpolarization of the postsynaptic membrane, thereby inhibiting action potential propagation. So, the opioid receptors are actually having dual mechanism of action. Presynaptically, it prevents calcium channel, thereby preventing entry of calcium and reducing neurotransmitter release. Postsynaptically, it opens potassium channels, thereby hyperpolarizing postsynaptic membrane and reduction in the action potential generation. These opioids receptors functions are rather diverse. Mu opioid receptors are the most prominent among all these three types of receptors. It has some important function which we need to know about. One is known as euphoria, that is mood elevating state. Second one is called analgesia. So that is why opioids are most commonly renowned for analgesics effect. That analgesia works at the level of spinal and supraspinal level that we have already seen. Thirdly, it is a very important property of mu opioid receptor to depress respiratory centers. Fourthly and fifth, constipation and meiosis. These two features are very important for mu opioid receptor. Sedation is a common property for all opioids. Muscle rigidity and dependence are the other factors. Dependence is of particular concern because of opioids are often abused. Affinity wise, endorphin works more on the mu opioid receptors than enkephalin and dynorphin. Kappa receptors, instead of euphoria, it causes dysphoria, that is fluctuation in the mood state. Analgesia to dependence, these functions remain same for kappa. And affinity wise, enkephalin works more on the kappa type of receptor than endorphin and dynorphins. Delta receptors have the same action as that of mu, like analgesia, respiratory depression, constipation, etc. But it has two important extra property. One is affective behavior, another one is reinforcing actions. We will discuss about this later. Affinity wise, dynorphin works much more on the delta variety than endorphins and enkephalins. With this, I end the first part of opioids analgesics. I will continue the opioid drugs from the next part onwards. Till then, read your textbooks and ask any question that comes into your mind.